While you've got the ground opened up, I bought these experimental soil nutrient sensors. Wireless things, supposed to monitor moisture and pH. Could you just pop these 6 little plastic things in the ground for me while you're aerating? Right under the sod along the path? I held up one of my completed, powder-filled, but sealed devices, hoping it looked vaguely sensor-like. Mike picked one up, turned it over. Huh, nutrient sensor, eh? Looks kinda like, I don't know. Okay, yeah, sure, easy enough to bury 'em while we aerate. Weird spot for sensors, though. Yeah, well, I shrugged. Experimental. Karen lives 2 doors down, but the sidewalk takes a slight curve. Cutting diagonally across the corner of my front lawn shaves approximately 4.7 seconds off her journey to the mailbox, or wherever else she's power walking off to in her Lululemon gear. 4.7 seconds. Apparently, this time saving was worth trampling the delicate ecosystem of my fescue blend and occasionally flattening the pansies I optimistically planted near the walkway each spring. At first, I figured she just didn't realize. Our neighborhood, Pleasant View Heights, the irony is not lost on me, doesn't have fences in the front yards, just polite stretches of grass demarcating personal space. So the first few times I saw her striding across my lawn like she was conquering new territory, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. The first time I spoke up, it was peak politeness. Caught her mid-stride, halfway between my oak tree and the aforementioned pansies. Hey Karen, I ventured, trying for a friendly neighbor vibe. Mind maybe sticking to the sidewalk? Trying to get the grass to grow in that corner? She gave me a blank look, as if the concept of not walking wherever she pleased was utterly foreign. Oh, Walter, don't be silly. It's just grass. It's much faster this way. And she continued on her merry, lawn-compressing way. Okay. Politeness failed. Time for phase 2. Visual deterrence. I bought one of those polite little "Please keep off grass" signs. The kind with the friendly cartoon gnome on it. Planted it right in the middle of her preferred shortcut. The next day, the sign was gone. Not broken, not vandalized, just gone. Vanished. I later saw it peeking out from under a pile of leaves in her yard waste bin. Accidental? I think not. Phase 3. Physical barriers, sort of. I bought some of that low decorative wire border fencing, about a foot high, and installed it along the edge of the lawn she cut across. It looked kind of tacky, frankly, but I was getting desperate. The next afternoon, I watched from my window as Karen approached, saw the tiny fence, paused for approximately half a second, then carefully, deliberately, lifted one Lululemon-clad leg high over the wire and continued on her path, stepping neatly between my surviving pansies. She didn't even break stride. The fence was less a deterrent, more a minor gymnastic challenge she apparently relished. Phase 4. Official channels. I complained to the HOA, sent them photos of the path worn into my lawn, explained my failed attempts at diplomacy and gnome-based signage. Their response? A masterpiece of bureaucratic buck-passing. Dear Mr. Schmidt, the form letter read, thank you for bringing your concerns to our attention. The Pleasant View Heights HOA encourages neighborly communication to resolve property line disputes. While we remind all residents to respect private property, the association does not actively police pedestrian pathways unless significant property damage is documented. We suggest discussing the matter further with your neighbor. Discuss it further? I'd be better off discussing quantum physics with my toaster. I even considered calling the police non-emergency line once, just to ask about trespassing. The dispatcher was polite but firm. Sir, unless she's causing damage, refusing to leave when you ask her while she's on the property, or there's a no trespassing order in place, it's generally a civil matter. We can't station an officer there to watch your lawn. So there I was. Polite requests ignored. Signs vanished. Fences hurdled. HOA useless. police powerless. Karen continued her daily diagonal march across my lawn with impunity, sometimes even waving cheerfully if she saw me watching, as if daring me to do something about it. My grass was developing a permanent cow path. My pansies had given up the ghost, and my simmering resentment was reaching boiling point. My buddy Dave, over beers one night, offered his usual brand of helpful advice. "Dude, just get a dog," he suggested. "A big one. Let him greet Karen next time she cuts across." Tempting, I admitted. But knowing my luck, I'd get fined by the HOA for having an intimidating animal or something. Okay, Dave mused. Motion-activated sprinkler? Tried it, I sighed. She complained to the HOA about me getting her wet on my property. They sent me a warning about water nuisance. Unbelievable. Dave shook his head. All right, think outside the box. What startles people but doesn't actually hurt them? A loud noise? She'd just call the cops for disturbing the peace. A bad smell? HOA violation for sure. Something messy? I ventured, thinking about Fifi, the mud dog from that other story I definitely don't remember. Dave's eyes lit up. Messy, yeah, like, what if every time she stepped on your lawn, she got slimed, like on those old Nickelodeon shows? Slime might be hard to implement, I mused, and probably violate 17 environmental regulations, but messy, startling, harmless? The gears started turning. What about color? Color. Bright, obnoxious, impossible to ignore color. The kind they use in those color run things or the holy festivals. Powdered, non-toxic, biodegradable cornstarch dyed in hues that would make a unicorn jealous. What if Karen's shortcut suddenly became a rainbow gauntlet? The idea took root and blossomed with terrifying speed. Forget slime, forget noise. A sudden, unexpected explosion of color. It wouldn't hurt her, not physically, but it would definitely startle her. It would definitely mark her literally as a trespasser. And the sheer mess involved in getting neon pink powder off white sneakers? That might just be inconvenient enough to make her reconsider her route. This wasn't about causing harm. It was about creating a consequence. A harmless, washable, but deeply annoying consequence. I needed booby traps. Harmless booby traps. Powder mines. My late-night internet searches shifted from how to get grass stains off sidewalks to DIY pressure plate trigger mechanism, non-toxic bulk color powder, and simple pneumatic puff device. I felt like a suburban Wile E. Coyote, plotting the downfall of my own personal roadrunner, though Karen was significantly less speedy and much more annoying. I ruled out anything complex or potentially dangerous. No explosives, obviously. No projectiles that could hit her in the eye. No liquids that could stain permanently. It had to be simple, reliable, and undeniably harmless, except to Karen's dignity and dry cleaning bill. I settled on a design. A small, shallow plastic container buried just beneath the sod. Inside, a generous scoop of brightly colored holy powder. On top of the container, resting just below the grass roots, a simple pressure plate made from thin wood or sturdy plastic. Connected to the pressure plate, a simple mechanical trigger, maybe a spring-loaded lever arm, or even better, a small disposable CO2 cartridge, like for inflating bike tires, rigged with a pin valve. When Karen stepped on the hidden pressure plate, it would depress the trigger, releasing the spring or piercing the CO2 cartridge, creating a sudden puff of compressed air inside the container, forcing the powder upwards in a localized, startling cloud around her foot and lower leg. Simple, effective, non-lethal, gloriously messy. Procurement was surprisingly easy. Bulk holy powder in eye-searing shades of pink, Blue, green, orange, and yellow was readily available online, advertised as non-toxic, eco-friendly, and skin-safe, cornstarch and food-grade dyes. Small CO2 cartridges were cheap. The pressure plates and trigger mechanisms required some basic tinkering in my garage, involving springs, small hinges, plastic tubing, and maybe a bit of duct tape. I felt like MacGyver if MacGyver's mission was passive-aggressive lawn defense. I built 6 identical devices, each loaded with a different vibrant color, my little rainbow coalition of annoyance. Now for the installation. This was the tricky part. I needed to bury them along Karen's well-worn shortcut path without making it obvious the lawn had been disturbed. Doing it myself under cover of darkness seemed like the best bet. Less chance of witnesses or awkward questions. However, fate intervened in the form of Mudslide Mike, the landscaping guy who had delivered the mountain of dirt for my other neighbors. Previous landscaping project. Again, different story. I saw his truck down the street doing some legitimate work. An idea sparked plausible deniability via contractor. "Hey, Mike," I called out, wandering over casually. "Got a weird question for you." Mike looked up from his wheelbarrow, wiping sweat. "Hey, Walt, shoot. After that last job you called me about," referring to the mud pit story I definitely don't remember. "Nothing sounds weird anymore." "Great," I said. "So I'm having some, soil compaction issues along this specific path here." I pointed towards Karen's shortcut. "Was wondering if you could do some deep core aeration just along this strip, really loosen things up?" Mike squinted at the path. "Aeration? Sure, looks fine to me, but okay." "And," I added, trying to sound nonchalant, "while you've got the ground opened up, I bought these experimental soil nutrient sensors, wireless things, supposed to monitor moisture and pH. Could you just pop these 6 little plastic things in the ground for me while you're aerating? Right under the sod, along the path?" I held up one of my completed, powder-filled, but sealed devices, hoping it looked vaguely sensor-like. Mike picked one up, turned it over. "Huh? Nutrient sensor, eh? Looks kinda like, I don't know. Okay, yeah, sure, easy enough to bury 'em while we aerate. Weird spot for sensors, though." "Yeah, well," I shrugged. "Experimental." Mike and his crew did the aeration the next day, and true to his word, carefully buried my 6 nutrient sensors just beneath the surface along Karen's path, replacing the sod neatly on top. Perfect. They looked completely invisible. My rainbow landmines were armed and waiting. All I had to do was sit back, watch, and wait for Karen's regularly scheduled trespass. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I didn't have to wait long. Karen's routine was as predictable as the sunrise, only far more irritating. Around 3:15 p.m. the next day, her front door opened, and out she strode, clad in her usual power-walking attire, visor firmly in place, phone pressed to her ear, already mid-stride towards my lawn. I positioned myself strategically at my living room window, partially hidden by the curtains, heart pounding with a mixture of nervous excitement and gleeful anticipation. This was it. Judgment Day. Or rather, Powder Day. She stepped off the sidewalk onto the grass, heading diagonally towards the oak tree. Her usual route, completely oblivious. Talking animatedly on her phone. Come on, Karen, I thought. Just a few more steps. Right into the pink zone. Her foot came down, right where Mike's crew had buried the first sensor. Poof! A sudden, startling cloud of brilliant neon pink powder erupted from the grass, engulfing her right ankle and shin in a vibrant haze. Karen stopped dead. Mid-sentence. She looked down, bewildered. "What the?" I could faintly hear her say into the phone. She stared at her now pink sneaker and calf, confusion warring with annoyance on her face. She probably thought a neighborhood kid had thrown something. She took another step forward, maybe trying to brush the pink dust off, muttering into her phone. Her foot landed squarely on the next trigger point. Poof! This time, electric blue powder exploded upwards, coating her other leg. Now she yelped, jumping back in genuine surprise, dropping her phone onto the grass, hopefully not onto another trigger. "What is going on?" she shrieked, looking around wildly. Oh, this is better than I ever imagined, I thought, stifling a laugh behind the curtain. Go for the trifecta, Karen. Panicked now, she took another hasty step sideways, trying to get off the attacked path. Wrong move. Poof! Lime green. It puffed up beautifully, adding a third distinct color to her previously pristine white leggings. She stood there for a moment, frozen, looking down at her multicolored legs like she'd accidentally wandered onto the set of a particularly aggressive children's art project. Pink, blue, green. She looked like a walking, sputtering Jackson Pollock painting. That's when she spotted me. I'd made the mistake of letting a chuckle escape, and her head snapped towards my window. Her eyes, wide with shock moments before, now narrowed into slits of pure fury. The connection was made. Forgetting her dropped phone, forgetting decorum, forgetting everything except righteous indignation, she stormed towards my front door, leaving faint, multicolored puffs in her wake with every angry step. I quickly composed myself, wiped the grin off my face, mostly, and casually opened the front door just as she reached it, pretending I was just stepping out to check the mail. "Karen!" I exclaimed, feigning wide-eyed shock and concern. "Good heavens, what on earth happened to you? Did you get into a fight with a rainbow?" "Walter Schmidt!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling, powder-dusted finger at me. Her voice was several octaves higher than usual. "You did this! Your lawn! It attacked me!" "Attacked you?" I widened my eyes further. "Karen, lawns don't attack people. Are you feeling okay? That's a lot of color you've got there. Very festive." "Don't you play innocent with me?" she seethed, flecks of blue powder dislodging from her leggings as she vibrated with rage. "I stepped on your grass, and it exploded. Pink, blue, green all over me. You booby-trapped your lawn?" "Booby-trapped?" I gasped, clutching my chest theatrically. "Karen, that's a terrible accusation. Why would I ever do such a thing? Are you sure it wasn't, kids? Maybe playing one of those color run games nearby. The powder blows around, I peered intently at my lawn. Looks perfectly normal to me. Maybe it's a strange type of pollen or a bizarre soil fungus. Some fungi are brightly colored. "Fungus!" she screamed. "This was not fungus, Walter. This was you. I saw you lurking in the window. You deliberately set traps for me." "Karen," I said soothingly, adopting a tone one might use with a hysterical toddler, which probably didn't help. "I assure you I have no idea what you're talking about. But perhaps this is a sign? Maybe the universe is telling you that cutting across private property isn't the best idea. Seems hazardous, wouldn't you say? Maybe stick to the sidewalk. It's much less colorful." I gave her my most innocent, helpful smile. She just stood there, sputtering, momentarily speechless, dusted in neon hues, looking utterly defeated and ridiculous. Finally, she let out one more incoherent shriek of rage, spun around, leaving a faint pink cloud, snatched up her dropped phone, and stormed back towards her house, presumably to call the authorities, the HOA, the CDC, and possibly NATO. I watched her go, then allowed myself a slow, satisfied grin. Operation Color Cloud, successful beyond my wildest dreams. Now for the fallout. The fallout, much like the powder cloud, was immediate, colorful, and spread rapidly. Karen, true to form, apparently spent the next hour on the phone, dialing every number she could think of that might possibly inflict bureaucratic pain upon me. First came the HOA. Brenda, the long-suffering office manager, called me. her voice tight with controlled panic. "Walter? Brenda here. Just received a rather frantic call from Karen Dubois. Something about exploding colors? On your lawn? And her person?" "Exploding colors, Brenda?" I feigned confusion. Goodness, no. Karen did stop by earlier, seemed quite agitated, had some sort of powdery substance on her trousers. Very strange. I suggested it might be pollen. Brenda sighed heavily. "Walter, she sent pictures. She looks like she wrestled a unicorn and lost. She's demanding immediate action, citing bylaws about nuisances, unapproved landscaping, hazardous materials." "Hazardous?" I cut in quickly. "Brenda, if there was any powder, I assure you it would be nothing more than harmless, non-toxic, biodegradable cornstarch, like they use in those fun runs. Perfectly safe. Unlike, say, trespassing repeatedly on private property." "Just expect a violation notice, Walter," Brenda said wearily. "Probably several." The notices arrived the next day, a veritable rainbow of infractions. Violation, creation of a public nuisance, airborne particulate matter. Violation, installation of unapproved subsurface landscaping devices. Violation, application of non-approved ground cover, multi-hued powder. Violation, potential environmental contamination via unknown powdered substance. I emailed Brenda the ingredients list for non-toxic holy powder. Violation, failure to maintain lawn in aesthetically uniform condition. And my favorite, violation, installation of prohibited booby traps, hazardous devices. They demanded immediate removal of the devices and professional lawn remediation, threatening fines that started steep and went vertical. Then came the police. Karen had apparently called them immediately after failing to get satisfaction from the HOA, claiming assault. 2 officers arrived at my door, looking profoundly unenthusiastic. Officer Miller, yes, him again, the poor guy must have requested a transfer away from my neighborhood by now, sighed when he saw me. "Mr. Schmidt," he began, rubbing his temples, "let me guess. This involves your neighbor, Miss Dubois, and possibly colors?" "You could say that, officer," I admitted. "She trespassed on my lawn again, and apparently encountered some unexpected powder." "Right," Officer Miller said. "Miss Dubois is alleging you deliberately booby-trapped your lawn to assault her with noxious chemicals." "Noxious chemicals?" I scoffed. "Officer, it's cornstarch and food coloring, like kids play with, and they're not booby traps. They're harmless trespassing deterrents triggered only by direct foot pressure on my private property after numerous warnings to stay off were ignored." I explained the simple mechanism, emphasizing its non-injurious nature. I even offered to carefully dig one up to demonstrate, away from Karen's path, obviously. The officers exchanged a look. "Did you warn her you were putting these powder puffers in?" the younger officer asked. "I warned her repeatedly to stay off my lawn," I countered. "The method of deterrence shouldn't matter if she wasn't trespassing." "Okay, look," Officer Miller said, clearly wanting this to be over. "Technically, what you described doesn't sound like criminal assault. The powder is harmless. The devices aren't inherently dangerous projectiles or explosives. It's weird, really weird, but likely a civil matter." He turned serious. "However, sir, rigging any kind of device like this, even harmless, carries risks. What if someone else accidentally steps on it? A child, the mail carrier? What if someone is startled, falls, and gets hurt? Your civil liability could be significant. We strongly advise you remove them." He then turned towards Karen, who was watching intently from her porch. "And ma'am," he called out, "we've advised you before about trespassing. Continuing to enter Mr. Schmidt's property after being warned could result in a citation. Please use the sidewalk." They left, leaving Karen fuming and me with a warning about liability but no actual charges. The neighborhood, of course, was buzzing. My exploding lawn became the primary topic of gossip. Reactions were mixed. Some thought it was hilarious, and that Karen got what she deserved. Others were horrified, siding with Karen about the danger and eyesore. Kids started daring each other to try and run across my lawn. I quickly put up temporary yard closed for soil treatment signs to prevent accidental powderings. The HOA fines continued to pile up. Karen, perhaps emboldened by the liability warning from the police, sent a letter via her lawyer demanding I pay for the emotional distress and property damage, to her shoes, caused by the powder assault. My lawyer sent back a letter reminding her about trespassing laws and suggesting she invest in washable footwear. It was a colorful Cold War. The Great Powder Standoff lasted for about 2 glorious, stressful, rainbow-hued weeks. During that time, Karen did not set foot on my lawn. Not once. She took wide, exaggerated detours onto the street to avoid even getting close to the property line. Fifi, her dog, was kept on a short leash and seemed to actively pull away from my yard. Victory! The system, however bizarre, actually worked. But the pressure was mounting. The HOA fines were accumulating at an alarming rate. My lawyer advised that while criminal charges were unlikely, Karen could potentially sue me in civil court if she could manufacture some damages, and the HOA could eventually place a lien on my property for the unpaid fines, leading to a long, expensive legal battle over the validity of their bylaws regarding subsurface landscaping devices and aesthetic powder uniformity. The City Code Enforcement Office, while initially baffled, sent a notice requiring me to either get a permit for ground alterations or restore the lawn, citing the potential for the buried devices to interfere with utility line access, a stretch but plausible. And honestly, maintaining the powder mines was becoming a hassle. I had to carefully avoid stepping on them myself. Mowing the lawn was impossible, and the constant low-level anxiety about what if the mail carrier accidentally triggered one, or what if a neighborhood kid did try to run the gauntlet. The police warning about liability echoed in my head. The initial thrill of victory was fading, replaced by the weary reality of ongoing conflict. Maybe the point had been made. So, one quiet evening, under the cloak of darkness, and feeling slightly ridiculous, I went out with a trowel and carefully, meticulously dug up my 6 little powder bombs. Disarmed them, cleaned them out, filled in the small holes. By morning, the lawn looked mostly normal again, perhaps with a few oddly disturbed patches of sod. The rainbow landmines were gone. I sent a polite email to the HOA management office, CCing my lawyer and theirs, stating that the experimental soil nutrient sensors had been removed and the temporary soil discoloration was fading. I made no admission of guilt, offered no apology, but signaled the end of hostilities. The HOA, likely relieved to avoid a costly legal fight over exploding cornstarch, eventually agreed to waive the accumulated fines in exchange for my assurance that no further unapproved subsurface devices would be installed. Karen, seeing the danger had passed, and perhaps warned off by the police mention of trespassing citations, continued to use the sidewalk. A silent, unacknowledged truce settled over Maple Lane. So, what's the takeaway from my colorful crusade? Well, my lawn is back to normal, mostly. My relationship with Karen consists of icy silence and mutual avoidance, which is honestly an improvement. The HOA still sends me notices about the precise angle of my recycling bin, but not about exploding powder. Was it the most mature, sensible way to handle a neighbor cutting across my grass? Absolutely not. It was petty, passive-aggressive, and borderline insane. Did it cost me time, money for supplies and lawyer consultations, and a significant amount of stress? You bet. But did it work? Did it finally, definitively stop Karen from using my lawn as her personal shortcut after all other methods failed? Yes. Yes, it did. Sometimes when reason fails, when rules are ignored, when politeness is met with entitlement, you have to get creative. You have to fight petty with petty, brightly colored, harmless explosions. It might not win you any good neighbor awards, but sometimes, just sometimes, it gets the job done. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I see a dandelion popping up. Gotta maintain those community standards, right? Hi, I said, feeling slightly ridiculous. I have a bit of an unusual project. I need to make my house disappear. There was a pause, then a hearty laugh. Disappear? You mean, like, actually disappear? Well, not actually, I clarified. More like visually disappear, camouflage, optical illusion. You know, make it blend into the background so well it looks like it's not even there. Intriguing, the illusionist said. Very intriguing. Tell me more. Okay, he said, tapping his chin with the pencil. We've got some good natural camouflage to work with here. Trees in the back, that big oak on the side. We can definitely make this work. I pulled out the dreaded HOA-approved color palette. Here's the catch, I said. They want earth tones. Kevin took one look at the swatches and burst out laughing. Earth tones? These are more like blah tones. But don't worry, we can work with this. We'll just enhance them. Think of it as camouflage with a beige base coat. It was a Tuesday. I remember it clearly because Tuesdays are usually my do absolutely nothing days. I was sprawled out on my porch swing, perfectly good iced tea in hand, enjoying the mild weather and the lack of HOA-related drama in my life. That's when I saw it. The envelope. It wasn't just any envelope, mind you. This was HOA stationery. Thick, creamy, off-white cardstock with that embossed logo, a stylized silhouette of identical houses that always gave me the creeps. My stomach immediately dropped. I just knew this wasn't going to be good. I ripped it open, hoping, against all logic, that it was a misaddressed flyer about a neighborhood potluck. Nope. It was a notice of exterior color non-compliance. Apparently, my house, my perfectly lovely, slightly faded but still totally respectable light blue house, was an egregious violation of the community's aesthetic harmony. I swear, these people and their flowery language. It's paint, Doris, not a declaration of war. The letter went on, in excruciating detail, about how my house color was disruptive and detracted from the overall cohesive appearance of the neighborhood. It demanded that I repaint within 30 days, using only colors from their pre-approved palette. I scanned the list. Gentle fawn, whispering wheat, subtle stone, barely there beige, almost invisible ivory. It was basically 50 shades of beige, each more depressing than the last. I actually gagged a little. My house was going to look like a giant, depressing mushroom. My phone was already in my hand before I finished reading. I dialed Mark, my best friend and, conveniently, a lawyer. Mark, I said, trying to keep the hysteria out of my voice, you are not going to believe the fresh hell the HOA has unleashed upon me. Mark, who's heard it all when it comes to HOA shenanigans, just chuckled. Let me guess. They don't like your petunias? Worse, I said, pacing my porch. They hate my house color. They want me to repaint the entire thing in beige. There was a pause, then a burst of laughter. Seriously, beige? That's peak HOA nonsense, my friend. You gotta fight this. This is a hill worth dying on. I know, right? I said, feeling slightly vindicated. It's not even that bad. It's a little faded, sure, but it's not like I painted it neon pink or something. Fight the power, man, Mark said, still chuckling. Fight the beige power. So, the following Thursday found me at the monthly HOA meeting, armed with a folder full of slightly less offensive paint chips and a rapidly dwindling sense of optimism. I figured maybe, if I showed them I was willing to compromise, they'd back down. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. The meeting was held in the community center, which, of course, was a monument to beige. The walls were beige, the carpet was beige, the chairs were beige. I felt like I'd wandered into a sepia-toned photograph. It was soul-crushingly bland. I took a seat near the back, trying to blend in with the beige upholstery. Then she appeared. Doris Higginbottom, HOA president, self-appointed arbiter of taste, and, from what I could gather, the supreme ruler of all things beige. She was wearing a pantsuit the color of unbleached flour, and her gray hair was pulled back into a bun so tight, I'm surprised it didn't pull her face into a permanent grimace. This woman looked like she hadn't smiled since 1987. Doris took the stage with the air of someone about to announce the winners of a very serious, very beige competition. She cleared her throat, adjusted her microphone, and launched into a speech that could have cured insomnia. "Good evening, fellow homeowners," she began, her voice as dry and crackly as an autumn leaf. "As you know, we are here tonight to discuss matters of vital importance to the continued harmony and aesthetic integrity of our beloved community." She clicked a button, and a projector flickered to life, displaying a slideshow of houses. And oh, what a slideshow it was. House after house, each painted in a slightly different, yet equally depressing, shade of beige. It was like looking at a catalog of existential dread. "As you can see," Doris droned on, gesturing with a laser pointer at a particularly beige house, "our community standards emphasize a cohesive and unified color palette. This ensures that our homes blend seamlessly together, creating a tranquil and aesthetically pleasing environment for all." I wanted to scream. Blend seamlessly together. We were going to look like a giant beige blob. When it was time for community concerns, I raised my hand, feeling a surge of rebellious energy. Doris looked at me with the kind of disdain usually reserved for telemarketers and people who wear socks with sandals. "Yes, mister," she said, peering at a list. "Mr. Taylor," I replied, standing up. "I'm here to discuss the notice I received about my house color." "Ah, yes," Doris said, a flicker of something that might have been amusement in her eyes. "The blue house." I pulled out my folder of paint chips. "I understand the concern about maintaining a cohesive look," I began, trying to sound reasonable. "But I think the current color is not that far off from the approved palette. I've even brought some samples that are closer." Doris cut me off with a wave of her hand, a gesture so dismissive it could have knocked me off my feet. "Mr. Taylor, the rules are quite clear. Your current house color is not in compliance. You have 30 days to repaint, using one of the approved colors." I tried again. "But there are other houses in the neighborhood that are in much worse shape. Some have peeling paint, cracked siding." "Those are separate issues, Mr. Taylor," Doris said, her voice turning icy. "We are addressing those on a case-by-case basis. Your issue is the color of your house." "But it's just a color!" I exclaimed, my voice rising slightly. "It's not hurting anyone, and repainting is expensive." Doris's eyes narrowed. "Rules are rules, Mr. Taylor." Defeated, but with a spark of defiance still flickering within me, I decided to try one last sarcastic tactic. "So," I said, forcing a smile, "just to be clear, I can paint it any shade of beige I want, as long as it's on that list?" Doris smiled back, a thin, cruel smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Within the approved palette, of course, Mr. Taylor. We wouldn't want any unpleasant surprises." The meeting adjourned shortly after that. I walked out, feeling like I'd just been steamrolled by a beige-colored tank. But as I drove home, past all the identical, soulless houses, a thought began to take shape in my mind. Doris wanted beige? Oh, I'd give her beige. I'd give her so much beige, she'd never look at another neutral color again. It was time to get creative. It started with an idea, a half-joking comment of Mark, Camouflage to be exact. The next day, still fuming from the HOA meeting and Doris's beige tyranny, I called Mark again. "Okay," I said. "Remember how you joked about painting my house camouflage?" "Yeah," Mark said, a hint of apprehension in his voice. "Why?" "I'm thinking, maybe it's not such a crazy idea." There was a long silence. Then, "Wait, are you serious?" "Dead serious. Think about it. They want me to repaint, right? They want earth tones, right? Well, what's more earth tone than, the actual earth?" Mark started laughing. "You're actually going to do it? You're going to camouflage your house?" "I'm thinking urban camouflage," I corrected him. "The kind that makes buildings blend into their surroundings. Make it look like nothing's there." "Dude, that's insane," Mark said, but I could hear the admiration in his voice. "And also, kind of brilliant." And so began my descent into the wonderfully weird world of camouflage. I spent hours online, researching everything from military-grade camouflage patterns to urban stealth techniques. I learned about dazzle camouflage, used on ships during World War I, and about the intricate patterns designed to disrupt the human eye's ability to perceive shapes and outlines. I even found articles about optical illusions and how they could be used to create the impression of invisibility. It was a rabbit hole of epic proportions, and I was happily tumbling down it. But I quickly realized this was beyond my DIY capabilities. I could slap some paint on a wall, sure, but creating a full-blown optical illusion? I needed a professional. I needed an artist. I needed the illusionist. That's what he called himself anyway. I found him through a local artists collective website. His profile was full of mind-bending murals, trompe-l'oeil paintings that made walls look like they were crumbling, floors that appeared to drop into bottomless pits, and ceilings that opened up to starry skies. The guy was clearly a master of visual deception. His tagline was, "I don't just paint walls, I bend reality." Perfect. I called the number on his website, half expecting to get some automated answering service. Instead, a cheerful voice answered, "The illusionist, at your service?" "Hi," I said, feeling slightly ridiculous. I have a bit of an unusual project. I need to make my house disappear." There was a pause, then a hearty laugh. "Disappear? You mean like actually disappear?" "Well, not actually," I clarified. "More like visually disappear, camouflage, optical illusion. Make it blend into the background so well, it looks like it's not even there." "Intriguing," the illusionist said. "Very intriguing. Tell me more." I explained the whole HOA saga, Doris's beige obsession, and my desire for sweet, visual revenge. "So, you want to stick it to the HOA by making your house literally vanish?" the illusionist said, clearly enjoying the concept. "I love a challenge, and I especially love messing with HOAs. When can I come take a look?" The illusionist, whose real name turned out to be Kevin, arrived the next day. He was a whirlwind of artistic energy, dressed in paint-splattered overalls and sporting a pair of brightly colored glasses perched on his nose. He had a wild glint in his eye that suggested he was either a genius or completely mad, possibly both. Kevin immediately started circling my house, muttering to himself about angles, light sources, and visual disruption. He pulled out a sketchbook and began furiously drawing, his pencil a blur on the page. "Okay," he said, tapping his chin with the pencil. We've got some good natural camouflage to work with here. Trees in the back, a big oak on the side. We can definitely make this work. I pulled out the dreaded HOA-approved color palette. Here's the catch, I said. They want earth tones. Kevin took one look at the swatches and burst out laughing. Earth tones? These are more like blah tones. But don't worry, we can work with this. We'll just enhance them. Think of it as camouflage with a beige base coat. He then launched into a detailed explanation of his plan. It involved a combination of geometric patterns, strategically placed shading, and what he called voids, areas of color that would trick the eye into seeing empty space where there was actually wall. He showed me some rough sketches. My house looked like a glitch in the Matrix, a pixelated mess that somehow managed to look both present and absent at the same time. The key, Kevin explained, is to break up the straight lines of the house. We'll use angled stripes and irregular shapes to disrupt the silhouette. The garage door will be a particularly fun challenge. We'll make it disappear completely. And the windows, I asked. We'll outline them in a way that makes them look like reflections of the sky and trees, Kevin said with a mischievous grin. From a distance, they'll be practically invisible. We spent the next hour refining the design. Kevin was a fountain of ideas, constantly tweaking and adjusting the patterns, talking about focal points and negative space like he was composing a symphony of deception. The final design was a masterpiece of camouflage, a blend of greens, browns, grays, and, yes, even some of those dreaded beiges, all arranged in a way that would make my house vanish into the landscape. Before he left, Kevin handed me a few paint samples, carefully chosen to match the HOA's earth tones while still working with his camouflage design. Get these approved, he said. In writing. That's your insurance policy. I took the samples to the HOA office the next day, handing them over to a bored-looking clerk. I didn't mention the camouflage, of course. I just said I was complying with their repainting order. They stamped the samples approved without a second glance. They had no idea what they were signing off on. I practically skipped out of the office, barely able to contain my glee. Operation Vanishing House was officially a go. The actual painting took about a week. Kevin and his crew were like a well-oiled paint-slinging machine. They worked with a speed and precision that was mesmerizing. To avoid arousing too much suspicion, and to keep the HOA off my back, I parked my car a few blocks away and pretended I was on a business trip. Whenever curious neighbors asked what was going on, I'd just shrug and say, "Oh, you know, HOA stuff, repainting. It's a whole thing." This usually elicited sympathetic nods and eye rolls. Little did they know. Finally, the day arrived. The scaffolding came down. Kevin and his crew were packing up their equipment, looking exhausted but satisfied. Kevin, grinning from ear to ear, handed me a pair of those cheap cardboard 3D glasses. "What are these for?" I asked, puzzled. "Part of the magic," Kevin said with a wink. "Put these on and walk across the street. Stand right about there." He pointed to a spot on the sidewalk directly opposite my house. I did as I was told, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. I put on the glasses, and then I gasped. My house, it was gone. I mean, I knew it was still there. I could feel the solid ground beneath my feet, and I could see the faint outlines of the house if I looked really, really closely. But from across the street with the 3D glasses on, it looked like an empty lot. The camouflage was that good. The colors, the patterns, the strategically placed voids, it all blended seamlessly into the surrounding trees and sky. The garage door had vanished. The windows were practically invisible. It was like my house had been erased from existence. I took off the glasses, and the house reappeared, albeit in a much more abstract, geometric form. I put the glasses back on. Poof, gone. I did this about 5 times, giggling like a madman. The illusion was perfect. My first instinct, of course, was to call Mark. "You have to get over here," I said, trying to control my laughter. "You will not believe your eyes." Mark arrived 10 minutes later, looking skeptical. "Okay, let's see this invisible house of yours." I handed him the 3D glasses. He put them on, walked across the street, and stopped. His jaw dropped. He stood there for a full minute, speechless, just staring at the empty space where my house should have been. Then he burst out laughing, a loud, unrestrained guffaw that echoed down the street. "You absolute madman," he finally managed to say, wiping tears from his eyes. "You actually did it. You made your house disappear. Doris Higginbottom is going to have a coronary." The next morning, I set up my observation post. I brewed a pot of coffee, pulled up a chair to my now invisible living room window, and waited. Doris Higginbottom, I knew from careful observation, took her daily power walk at precisely 7:30 a.m. At 7:28 a.m., I saw her approaching, her beige power walking outfit a stark contrast to the lush green of the neighborhood. She was swinging her arms with the kind of aggressive determination that only an HOA president could muster. At 7:30 a.m. sharp, she reached my house, or rather, the spot where my house used to be visible. She stopped, dead in her tracks. Her face went through a series of expressions that I will cherish forever. First, confusion. She blinked, looked around, as if she'd somehow taken a wrong turn. Then, disbelief. She squinted, pulled out her phone, probably to check the address, and looked back at the empty space. Finally, pure, unadulterated outrage. Her face turned a shade of red I didn't think was humanly possible. She started frantically dialing her phone, jabbing at the screen with a trembling finger. I couldn't hear exactly what she was saying, but I could see her gesturing wildly at my house, or rather, not at my house. Within minutes, a police car pulled up. I saw Doris, now practically apoplectic, pointing and yelling at the officer. "It's gone," I heard her shriek. "He made his house disappear. It's a public safety hazard. It's illegal. It's unbeige." I couldn't hold it in any longer. I burst out laughing, clutching my sides. I decided it was time to make my appearance. I strolled outside, feigning innocence. "Good morning, officer," I said, trying to keep a straight face. "Is there a problem?" The officer, a young guy who looked utterly bewildered, turned to me. "Ma'am," he said to Doris, "I can see the house just fine. It's right there." He pointed directly at my camouflaged masterpiece. Doris sputtered. But, it's invisible, can't you see? He's using some kind of witchcraft." I decided to play along. "Officer," I said, "I think she might be having a little trouble with her vision. Maybe she needs to see an optometrist?" The officer, clearly struggling to keep a straight face, suggested that Doris might want to calm down and maybe have a cup of tea. He then drove off, leaving Doris fuming on the sidewalk. The news of the disappearing house spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. That afternoon, Doris called an emergency HOA meeting. The community center was packed. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, whispering about the invisible house and the camouflage genius. Doris, looking like she'd aged 10 years in a single day, took the stage. Her usual beige pantsuit was slightly rumpled, and her bun was noticeably less tight. "This is an outrage," she declared, her voice shaking. "Mr. Taylor has made a mockery of our community standards. He has painted his house in a way that is unacceptable." She then tried to introduce a new rule, a hastily written amendment to the HOA bylaws, banning camouflage or illusionary paint of any kind. The crowd erupted. "This is ridiculous!" someone shouted. "We love the house!" another yelled. "It's art!" A third person chimed in. People started chanting, "Let the house stay! Let the house stay!" Someone in the back pulled out their phone and started playing a TikTok video of my house. It was one of those videos where someone walks up to the empty lot, then throws a ball which bounces off the invisible wall. The video had apparently gone viral. There were already over 5 million views. 5 million! Doris, seeing her authority crumble before her eyes, let out a strangled scream. It was a sound of pure defeat, the death knell of her beige reign. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the community center, leaving behind a room full of cheering, laughing neighbors. I, of course, was smirking. It was a good day to be a homeowner who hated beige. In the days and weeks that followed, my house became a bona fide local legend. People would drive from miles around, sometimes even from other towns, just to see the disappearing house. They'd park across the street, pull out their phones, and take pictures of what appeared to be an empty lot. I even saw a few families picnicking on my invisible lawn. It was surreal. Tourists, bless their confused little hearts, would show up clutching printed-out directions and looking utterly bewildered. They'd stand in front of my house, double-checking the address, then staring at the empty space with expressions of profound confusion. I started leaving a few pairs of the 3D glasses on my porch, just for them. The look on their faces when they put them on and the house magically appeared was priceless. The TikTok video, of course, went completely viral. It racked up millions of views, spawned countless imitations, and even got featured on a few local news channels. News crews started showing up, wanting to interview the homeowner who made his house disappear. I always wore the 3D glasses during the interviews, hamming it up for the cameras. "It's all about perspective," I'd say, gesturing vaguely at the empty lot. "Sometimes you just have to look at things a little differently." The whole thing reached peak absurdity when a famous street artist, known only as Shade, contacted me. He'd seen the video online and was fascinated by the concept. He wanted to collaborate on a hidden mural project, adding even more layers of illusion to my already invisible house. "Think of it," Shade said, his voice crackling with excitement over the phone, "as a meta-camouflage. A camouflage within a camouflage. We'll hide images within the existing patterns, things that only become visible from certain angles or at certain times of day. It'll be like a giant interactive puzzle." How could I say no? My house was now a canvas for even more elaborate illusions. We spent a week planning and executing the hidden murals. We added subtle shifts in color and texture, creating images that appeared and disappeared depending on the light and the viewer's perspective. It was like my house had become a living, breathing work of art. Meanwhile, the fallout from the HOA meeting was glorious. Doris Higginbottom, defeated and humiliated, resigned from the HOA in disgrace. I heard, through the neighborhood grapevine, that she'd moved to an even stricter gated community, one with rules so rigid they even dictated the acceptable shade of white for window trim. I imagined her there, surrounded by an endless expanse of beige, slowly going mad. It was a beautiful thought. Life with an invisible house was, to put it mildly, interesting. I got used to the constant stream of visitors, the confused looks, and the occasional shouts of, "Wow!" when someone finally saw the house. Then, one sunny Saturday morning, a moving truck pulled up next door. A young couple, probably in their late 20s, got out, looking slightly dazed and overwhelmed, the universal expression of new homeowners. They started unloading boxes, and I watched them for a while, feeling a pang of sympathy. Moving is the worst. After a few minutes, the woman noticed me and walked over, a hesitant smile on her face. "Hi," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah, and this is my husband, Tom. We're your new neighbors." "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said, shaking her hand. I'm Joe. We're so excited to be here, Sarah said, glancing around. It's such a beautiful, quiet neighborhood. Then she frowned slightly. This might be a silly question, but do you know where the house at number 12 is? We have the address, but… She trailed off, looking confused. I pointed directly at my house, at the spot where, to her unaugmented eyes, there was nothing but trees and sky. Right there, I said. Sarah and Tom stared. They looked at me, then at the empty lot, then back at me. Their faces were a mixture of bewilderment and polite disbelief. But there's nothing there, Tom said, stating the obvious. I grinned. It's a long story, I said. You'll get used to it. It's a feature, not a bug. I briefly explained the whole HOA saga, the camouflage paint, and the 3D glasses. They listened with growing amusement, their initial confusion slowly giving way to laughter. You're kidding, Sarah said, shaking her head. That's amazing. Welcome to the neighborhood, I repeated, feeling a surge of neighborly pride. It's never boring around here. I went back into the house and put my ladder in the garage, grabbing the flag I had made. I went up on the roof. It was time. I unraveled it. It was a custom-made flag, a black triangle with the words "Stealth Mode Engaged" in bold military-style font. I attached it to the flagpole on my roof, letting it flap proudly in the breeze. I stood there for a moment, admiring my handiwork. Maybe I had overdone it a little. The flag was a bit much, even for me. But honestly, I didn't regret a single thing. I'd fought the beige tyranny, and I'd won. And in the process, I'd turned my house into a local landmark, a testament to the power of creativity, and a giant middle finger to HOAs everywhere. It was a good feeling. It was a victorious one.